All right, I'm gonna wait for a few seconds and then we're gonna get started. Anthony, you're here, and Sarah, you're here, right? Uh,
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't see Sarah though. Oh yeah, you're here. So, what is the status of the checking and the editings? What's been going on with that?
So I think that Sarah and Nikki made the teams and divided up the work to line edit and fact check.
Okay.
And we're just waiting for people to put in like their almost final. And that's about it so far.
Okay. So the check, when is it gonna happen? The fact checking?
Probably once people start putting in like their almost final drafts,
Okay.
which
So
I would assume be Thursday, Friday,
okay. All right. So
since we said the day.
we don't have anybody with a finished story at this point, or do we? Some
I mean,
So
I haven't seen any like final drafts be put into it, but they might have made edits and made it final. But
okay. All right.
I mean, I guess are any like done with your pieces?
Anybody is here? No? Okay. So I would say, I mean, if you want us to take a look at the stories over the weekend, I would recommend you to actually start maybe the fact checking sooner than Friday, because many of those pieces are going to have to be thought, like, I don't know, there's a lot of sources that have to be checked. So maybe, I don't know, who's the team, the fact checking team?
I'm the editor.
Sorry, Nikki, you are?
Yeah, I'm the editor. I
Okay.
sent out like a spreadsheet for fact checking yesterday to everyone else in my team, and if everyone could just confirm that they got it, it would be really nice because I saw only Vinny was using it yesterday.
Okay.
But I did send that, so everyone on the fact checking team, check your emails.
So did you send it to me too?
Yeah, I sent it to you and Charles and Anthony and Sarah as well.
Okay, so make sure that, and when are you planning to start with the process, Nikki?
Just as soon as possible. I signed everyone. I split it up so the work should be even. Most people got 3 people to fact check. So
Okay.
if everyone could just check that as soon as possible and start.
You have 3 people in your team only?
No, like there's like 5 people on my team, including myself, I believe. And then
Okay.
everyone's like assigned 3 people.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I would suggest, I mean, if you start checking via email, it's not that hard to actually just shoot an email right away. So you would streamline the process for everybody else. If you're in the team, just like tackle that right away. I mean, do it like during class now. I think that's kind of the best way to deal with it. Start as soon as possible, because otherwise it's going to create, not having stories checked is going to create a bottleneck on Monday, like pretty bad. You're going to prevent other people from actually publishing. If the stories are not checked and we don't have any way to verify that they are checked, you're waylaying the publication for someone else. So get started as soon as possible. And the editing, who's the person in charge of the editing?
That's Sarah Beckford.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah,
There.
so for all the line editors of section 1, just put your name in the chat. Trying to reach out to you guys, so we can equally divide up the stories, so that it's not like too much for everyone. But yeah.
Okay, and when are you planning to start with? How many people you have on your team?
I believe I have. Hold on, let me check the. I think I have about 4. Hold on.
4?
4, yeah. 5
Okay.
actually, yeah, 5. So there's a, yeah.
Who is that? what's his name?
Deanna, Brennan, Irene, Joe, Noor.
Okay. So I would suggest, I mean, that if you have split all the stories already.
Oh yeah, we're working on it.
Okay, so if the stories are split and everybody knows who's checking what or who's editing what, I would suggest those editors to put a little bit of pressure on the writers they have to check.
Okay.
Or on the writers they have to edit, because like ultimately, like, you know, it's their responsibility to have the stories. I mean, it's everyone's responsibility to have your stories out there as soon as possible, but you don't want to make your editor's life miserable, and the editors have to actually time themselves because they are also writing stories, right? So I mean, like, if you are one of the, if you have like you're a sub editor and you're like an assistant editor, and you have like 4 stories to edit, right? And you have one that is ready, like, I don't know, I have Joe's story and it's ready and I can read it, so I can just read it, give him feedback, and if everybody's kind of stalling, I can put a little bit of pressure, like, hey guys, when are you sending me your story? I need this is like, even if it's a full almost finished piece, you can actually start like making changes and structural changes, so the process doesn't get too delayed. I'm getting a little bit concerned that things are pushed a little bit too much to Friday, to the limit, because on Monday basically you're publishing the stories on your personal WordPress blogs. And just to be clear, whether that story gets published or not on the Osprey will depend on how it looks on Monday. It's not that after Monday you're going to have a lot of wiggle room to actually improve the story itself, right? Like, whatever you see on Monday is whatever will get published in the Osprey or not. The process is basically in your hands. And as I mentioned, I wanted to give your grades, to give you back your grades early, right? So you can actually choose whether you can do a pass fail or a letter grade, right? So Monday itself, I'm going to be reading the stories and basically assigning the grade. So the grade and being in the Osprey are independent things, right? So maybe, I mean, yeah, probably the stories that I like the best, which are the ones that are going to probably get the better grades, are going to go to the Osprey. That's kind of like a normal avenue for those stories. But make sure that you have everything ready to go on Monday. Like, the story is not like, it still needs like 2 sources, or it still is structurally unsound, because like that's going to be evaluated on Monday. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So what I was thinking is going through, so those of you who have already like checked your stories with me, and I've given you some feedback, you can like, you know, tune out for a minute. I'm gonna close the class later, but still, if there's anybody who would like me to read the story at this point and check out like the bare bones of how it's coming along, I can do that. Sarah and Anthony, if you have time and you can be with us while I'm reading the story, that would be great. If you need to work on your own stories, that's also good. I just want to take a look at whatever we have available right now. Does that make sense? All right, so any volunteers? Okay, no more. So we can take your story now, and let me see. And everybody else, you can keep working on your stories. I want to check out Nora's. Okay.
It's a little rough. I have like the quotes, but I still have to incorporate them in the story.
Okay. So this is basically like a first draft, or?
Yeah.
Okay. The title, doctors, right? Like doctors say that vaping and smoking don't cause coronavirus infection, but it can lead to a more severe infection. So I would go into like directly to say that doctors, let me see. I mean, the title should say it should be like so vaping and smoking can lead to a severe a more severe infection. I think like because it's clear that like the vaping and smoking do not cause it. It's a virus that causes it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we know her husband's name?
No, but I can find that out.
Yeah, I mean that would be her husband or whoever, like Joe, her husband, not only visits. Do we know her age, by the way?
Yeah, I know her age.
So probably I would add it somewhere. And as a smoker for how many years, right? So I would say, let me add it as a suggestion here. For X many years. Exposure to I would say her potential exposure, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise we don't know whether it's exposure to what. So I would add her age here. Is years old, and is she part of the risk at-risk population? I mean, age-wise.
Let me check her age real quick.
I mean, if she's above, I guess 60, she is.
I think she's in her 40s.
Okay, so we don't need to say that. Oh, I mean, she's in her 40s. So why are we need to justify. So every line that you write and every piece of data that you incorporate to a story has to have a reason, right? So I have to think, why am I asking what is her age? And the reason why I'm asking is because like if she's 70, right, she's more probably at risk because her immune system is like lower than if she's like 25, right? Even if she has asthma or she has chronic pneumonia, etc. So every line that you add here, and you need to because like those are questions that the reader is going to be asking. So you need to like be very lean but didactic, right? Explain why, right? So she's 40 years old, say, and despite the fact that she's not one of the she's age-wise she's not in the most riskiest group, or the group that is most at risk, she's still concerned, right? So you give a little bit of an explanation why, like why? Because she has what I call it comorbidity issues, right? Comorbidity, and those comorbidities like make her like step up into the at-risk group. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say explain. So give her age here and explain the reason why you're telling us her age, right?
Mhm.
Mm. So when we say lung disease, we I think that we do it in singular, lung disease, not diseases. And okay, well, that's a good quote from a Yale guy. The University of Alberta in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to say that there. What is the graph there that you're gonna add that info?
So he gave me like a lot of information, so I would just probably use some kind of like scientific or health explanation, just
Okay.
delve in deeper.
Okay. Okay. So you have a really good array of sources here, Noor. It's and the structure is fine. It's good. So you only need to plug in like quotes. I would say you have a lot of doctors, which is good. I would probably want to go back to some of the maybe some of the patients. I mean, you
Yeah.
have maybe add one or two more. I don't know, Sarah, are you there checking it, or you're Anthony and Sarah? You're on your own stuff, or you're working with us?
No, I was reading it. I was reading Norse.
Okay, so I think that she probably needs a little bit of another patient. I mean, the medical aspect is super clear and well covered. I think that we probably need an extra patient, maybe.
Yeah, I agree. I think as many like firsthand stories you can get is better. Yeah.
Now, one suggestion, and I don't know how this is going to pan out, right? But would you be able to reach out to somebody in the vaping industry, or like not a vaping shop, right? But somebody who, like, a PR person for what's it called, Juul or one of those?
Sure, I'll try.
Okay. Actually, I know somebody. Maybe email me and remind me. I know some people who actually are PR people for Juul. So later, not now because I'm gonna lose it on the barrage of morning emails. But if you email me later, I can try to put you in touch with someone that I know.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay. Because I think that I mean, maybe cigarettes. I don't know. What do you think about like getting somebody from the tobacco industry?
I mean, the story is kind of about both, so both would work, tobacco and vaping.
Okay, so why don't you give it a shot too? Like, I don't know. Those are more difficult to reach out to. But Philip Morris has a foundation, so maybe you can reach out to the foundation and ask, hey, I mean, like sugarcoat it. And I know that you're like, I don't know, whatever. I mean, they're assholes anyway. But like, yeah, reach out to them if you can. I think that there's a chance that they may respond in time. Let them know what your deadline is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would say this two are the patient, and I think that you're pretty good to go. Now, can we check the? Let me see. Do you have what is this? The Google Drive here that you have.
They're like pictures and videos from a hospital.
Okay, so is it a personal Google Drive or is this one?
I uploaded them, yeah, on my Google Drive.
Okay, so let me see if I can. So this is yours. Okay. Okay. So it's just video or it's a oh, cool. So what hospital is this?
This is Good Sam Hospital in Babylon.
Okay. And the video is just a raw video?
Yeah.
Let me see. How did you get in?
My mom's a doctor, so she just like took it for me.
Oh, cool. Say thank you to your mother, actually.
Yeah.
Is she working with COVID people?
So kind of everyone is like,
Wow.
because like 90% of the hospital is COVID patients now.
Okay, so thank her for that too. Okay, so what are you planning to do with that?
Probably make a sound slide. I do have audio from one of the doctors, and I can try to put that together.
How did
Yeah.
and do you have anything from the patient?
I don't have any audio from the anecdotal people.
Okay.
Would that be better?
I think so. I mean, the same principle applies to that as to your first quote, right? The most important indicator of the most important, like, you know, exemplar of your story is your first quote. So if you can get her to answer one or two questions and send, remember that you cannot overtax that person, right? So you cannot ask her, oh, okay, I'm going to send you 20 questions. Can you answer 20 questions and send me the voice memos? But you can actually tell her, look, I mean, I'm going to send you 2 questions. You want to answer them back to back, like, don't script them, just like on the top of your head. And if it's a minute or a minute and a half or 2 minutes, then you can put it together.
Okay.
I think that will be better. And I don't think, I mean, as good as the photos are, you probably will need something from, like, I guess, online or advertising about Jewel or stuff like that you have to put there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do we have like the study that you cited, like, from when is it? I don't remember.
April 16th. It was like a.
Okay, so very recent. Okay, all right. So yeah, maybe like, if you go to the study or go wherever it was published and do a screen capture of it or something that kind of adds to the slideshow.
Okay.
Whenever you're mentioning the question about Juul or vaping or smoking. Okay.
Okay.
All right, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
So who would be next? Is anybody willing to go next?
Oh yeah, I'll go next.
Deanna? Okay. Hold on. So Noor, I'm gonna mark your story here with a star so we covered it. Deanna, right? Okay. Face masks, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is okay. The lead and the bread and butter, but your title and the lead and the bread and butter are not aligned. Why? So your title is Business Owners in the Hudson Valley Shift to Production of Personal Protective Equipment, which is great. It's a very interesting title. So I go to the lead, and I don't have information. I mean, from Albany to Westchester, local businesses in the Hudson Valley. I don't know how many businesses. I don't know what types of businesses. I don't know the number that they're producing or so you need to try to find something in your lead if you're gonna go for an inverted pyramid, right?
Yeah.
That tells me how much or who are these people who are producing for protective equipment, right? So that has to be either there or it has to be in the nut graph, right? If you're starting as it looks like with an inverted pyramid, then that information has to be there, right? And then your bread and butter should also be about the production, right? Like how many, I don't know, say, I mean, if you're talking in your lead about like at least 3,000 small businesses in the textile area or in the textile industry have shifted their production to this, right? In your second, in your nut graph, you should have some like, you should give us a sense of how much are they producing, or since when, or like related to production, right? Because that's what your lead is going. That's where what your headline is going, and what the core of the story is, right?
Yeah.
Do you have that information?
I don't know how many businesses exactly, but I mentioned 4 in the story, so I guess I could say like at least 4 have sent like yes, like a couple thousand.
Okay, so if you're going for 4, I mean, my intuition, and this is something that we cannot rely on, but like I would argue that there's probably more than 4 businesses in the Hudson area that are shifting to this type of production. 4 is too little. I don't know, 3,000 maybe too much or too many. But we need to have kind of a number that is closer to the reality, right? Like, so if you say in New York, more than 4, or on Long Island, more than 2 distilleries are producing hand sanitizer. Well, it's not too inaccurate, because I think it's a total, like we learned that there's a total like I don't know, 10 distilleries. So more than 2, like maybe 3, 4. Okay, that could be all right. But people who are producing PPE, like that's substantially more, because there's more. There's even like mom and pop shops that are doing that. There's like bodegas that are like there's supermarkets that are doing it too. So it's way more than 4. So the discrepancy between that low number 4 and the real number is too big. So we need to get closer to the real number. So does anybody have any semblance of what that number could be? Anybody who was reading other stories? Okay. So yeah, maybe look into, I don't know, say, I mean, New York Times or Newsday, or some of those papers that may have like an aggregation, or look into like how many, like Google it and see if that's something that it's available, right? Maybe there's somebody who's aggregating those numbers too. So let's try to find a closer number to that. Yep.
Okay.
And from the production of this PPEs went from 0, I guess it was in like, early January, to how many estimate right now. Yeah, that would be basically your bread and butter, I think. Yep.
Yeah, because these businesses didn't do anything like that before. They did this because their like regular businesses were shut down.
Yeah. Now, one thing that it's interesting to mention here, right, is like, so there's been a lot of price gouging regarding those protective masks.
Yeah.
So the business, so there could be two different models, right? People who are actually doing it for businesses, for profit, and people who are doing just out of solidarity. So they're not charging you extra. They're, yeah, of course, labor and materials, but they're not kind of like ginning up the price of those masks, right? So maybe you can say that also in the bread and butter.
I mentioned it a little bit lower, but I could move it up, like
Okay.
how the prices went up.
Okay, so let me continue with this. So I would say your third, so first graph, we mentioned it has to be more, are you taking down notes, Deanna?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first graph, I think, should be more about the business, like, you know, how many businesses. The second graph should be about what is the production. And I think that your third graph should be immediately a quote here, right? So I think that your quote from Lingard here, I think is a good quote, and you could float it up. And then you can go with the background of, on April 15th, Governor Cuomo issued a executive order requiring anyone who's unable to maintain. So again, like is there any, again, this is a social distancing, which does not necessarily pertain to production. Now I don't know if Cuomo issued a request for industries who can provide with those items, but anything that Cuomo asked about PPE, like if you have PPE, like anything, and whenever he said that, that will be a more pertinent reference there than just the safe social distance, or the more recent issue of a request for people to actually use masks, right? Because that is directly connected to your story, remember? So when was it? I think that it was, so this is Monday. I think that on Friday or Thursday or Friday, Cuomo said that people who are going out in the street should be wearing masks. Am I right? Or does anybody remember when was that? When did that happen?
Well, I know, like what I wrote on the 15th, it said if you're going, you have to wear a face mask. If you can't, like, stay a safe distance. But I don't know if he changed it to like wearing a mask.
Okay. So that's what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So no, that's correct. So okay, I wasn't reading it right. Yeah, so that's that issue. Okay, so that's perfect. So you got it there. So what I would do is I would put this quote here. Let me do the suggestions here. I will put that quote here. And you have to, the attribution has to be basically, what is the social distance circle?
It's just a project that this business made so that people can make their own masks at home and then drop them off at their donation center.
Okay. So probably, I mean, if we're putting it there, I think that you have to
say what it is, yeah.
Or maybe do this. I think that it was better before. So I think that you should leave it like that. So I would start with Unshattered. So Unshattered, say Lingard's organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
is part of the socialist, right? A product is formed through a
Yeah.
product formed a project that gives women, right?
Yeah.
So there you have, so you have Lingard's quote, right? On Shattered, you need to explain that they're producing whatever they're doing there. So you need to explain that here. So explain. Let me add a comment. Right? So you explain it there, and then everything else falls into place. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. So we go deeper into Unshattered now, right? Materials, okay. 58 cents as prices. You can actually give examples like of how much they've been charging. Like those masks, I mean, they have been charging up to like $20 or something like that. So
Yeah.
so do a quick survey of how much they have been charged. Like whatever in Amazon or whatever, those masks go up to whatever in Amazon, or they went up to whatever how much it was on Amazon when. And put it there, I would say, right? So add that there. Yeah. And when is the so price surged, price go up and down, but like you need to tell us when the price. It's important to know the date, like when did they peak, right? Those prices. So we got a reference, like, oh, it's not that they surged because like there was, I don't know, a market general demand. Yeah, I mean, it was a demand, but there's also like, price gouging because of the panic, right? Now, when you say low supply, you're implying that there were not enough masks, which is not necessarily true, because as we know, there's several instances in which people are hoarding those masks, or companies are hoarding them because they know that the prices are going to go up. So
yeah, I think I meant like the difficulty to like get masks.
So maybe put that instead of the yeah.
Okay.
Low supply, because I mean, it's a, or you can say that the low supply artificially, the artificial low, I mean, I don't know, because also if I'm saying that it's artificial, I'm saying that I'm giving my opinion there, but just rephrase that low supply. Usually supply is something that you assume it's not because of tampering with the market or because of external conditions, right? So usually low supply is that the industry is at maximum capacity and they cannot produce enough, which is not the case here. Yeah. You would say according, I'm in the, it takes around 10 to 15 to 25 minutes to make a mask. So I'm here. You usually use according to refer to a documental source, right?
Oh, okay.
So you say Lingard and Lung Weinstein agreed or said, right? but not according. Okay, so this is a good piece. I think that what we need is kind of a general, so what you're giving us is the details of this masks, the groups that are producing masks, etc. What we need is, so you have the granular elements there, but we need a context, right? Where are they? How are they operating? Who are the people they are? How many of this independent mask producers or PPE producers we have in a certain area? Say, I don't know, or you're talking about the Hudson Valley, or
Yeah.
okay, so how many of these producers we have in the Hudson Valley area? How many reconverted industries we have in that area? And you have to limit so you have to show us where they are placed, and you have to limit the scope of the article, right? Because if you say like the entire New York state, right, then the sampling from the Hudson Valley area is not enough. So you have to limit the scope of the story and tell us, well, there's in the Hudson Valley area, we comprehend this, and this county, there's like 80 factories, 80 textile factories. Out of those, like 10 have reconverted to produce PPE equipment, right? So we know exactly that area and how that area is operating, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have here sound slides? So can I play?
Oh yeah, I still am waiting to get audio to put over it. I emailed someone if they could record themselves for me.
Okay, all right. So let me see. So it's just images at this point, right?
Yeah.
And music, I guess. Okay, maybe the music is not great. It's
Yeah,
a little
no,
bit,
I just had to fix something.
okay. These are good photos, though. Did you take them?
No, I got them sent to me. Some sent to me from the people I interviewed, and some were from their Facebook page.
Okay, so we need to, I don't know whose photos are whose, but you probably want to give them credit for those, and they authorize the use, right? Okay, and then you have a long stretch of the closing titles there. So be careful because there's the photos are not spread evenly. You see that, right? So starting on minute 130, let me see, 113 up until 219, you have closing title.
Yeah, I thought I trimmed it.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I mean, whatever you're put. So the music is gonna determine the audio track is gonna determine the length, the overall length of your product. So if your audio track is like your interview is like a minute and a half, then you will have to like adjust the length of the photos to make them spread evenly over a minute and a half. Okay. And you need credit for those images too.
Do you want me to put it on like every photo? Because
so you say that they are all coming from the same spot, or
no, two. I put like for the first one, like they're from Unshattered, and then when I switched to a different business, I put it at the bottom.
So you can either do like each photo at a time and give credit in the caption, So this
Okay.
this belongs to this. Or if, let's say, photo from 1 to 10 are from one source, and photo from 10 to 20 something are from a different source, then you can actually credit them in the closing titles. Photos from 1 to 15, courtesy of what, and photos from so and so, courtesy of what, right? So you can actually, depending, if you can group them, then you can credit them in one spot. If you can't, because you're using one and the other, and then they're alternating, then you have to credit each one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Sarah and Anthony, any comments on this, or?
No, we read this on Sunday. I left a few comments. But
Okay. Yeah.
overall, it's on its way to being a good story.
Yeah, I think once you get some more sources, the story will definitely develop and go from there.
Yeah, I think that the key here is see how many of these businesses have reconverted into production, and how many of the businesses in that area in particular have reconverted. Yeah.
Yep.
Then kind of narrow down where we are, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, thank you, Deanna. And what is the other multimedia element that you're gonna be doing here?
I think I'm gonna make a infographic. I just have to figure out on what.
Okay, remember that, and for everybody, this applies, right? Like infographics are not part of the multimedia, the mandatory multimedia elements that you have to incorporate, right? So you either have an audio slideshow and a video, or a video and a audio postcard, but infographic is extra credit. Remember, we didn't, I mean, I took infographics out of the mandatory units, like so if you add an infographic, it's going to be extra credit, but the mandatory elements are audio visuals.
Okay.
Yeah. So probably you need either an audio postcard or like a video of some sort, etc., etc. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else would like me to check out their stories at this point? Nobody?
If you can check mine, I'd appreciate it. It's not fully done, but it's mainly done.
Okay. So let me see. Oh, Sarah, yours is it yours ready to check or not yet?
You, Sarah, or Sarah Beckford?
Sarah Ruberg.
Yeah, mine's completely finished. I just have to put the audio postcard there.
Okay. Have I read it?
Yeah, you read mine last class.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Edits you wanted me to make.
And Anthony too, right? Yes. Okay. So we have. Let me see. Can't find it here. Okay.
It's called Medical Families.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was looking. Yeah. Okay. So let me. Okay. Okay. So Daniel and David Waters, right? That's yours, Irini?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, this is interesting, but I don't know. So does the kid have COVID-19?
No, the dad just like works in like the hospital like daily almost.
Huh.
So he's just worried about passing it on to like the people like he knows, because
Daniel, okay. So there's a couple of things that I think you should do here in your lead to make it clearer. So you have to say since when they've been waiting for his son Dominic to start walking, right? So because clearly they didn't start waiting for him to take his first step like since the moment he was born, right? So
Right.
but he started attempting to stand up, say, and walk like relatively recently, I'm assuming, right? Like maybe in the
Yeah.
past month or so. How old is the kid?
9 months.
Oh, 9 months. Okay. So when do they normally start walking?
I mean, anytime between like 9 months and like a year.
Okay. So I think that you should that should be clear there. So Danielle started watching their 9-month-old Dominic, and not crawl around because that trying to, he's been trying to grab on stuff and probably he's trying to he's starting to make attempts to stand up, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. He's not crawling around. He's kind of trying to stand up.
Yeah.
And then you should say after that, I would add a period there, and then he's at the age where he will start walking anytime soon, right? So now you're setting the scene, right? So he's trying to stand up, and he's about to start walking like any minute, right? Between 9 and 12. So you have to say that there. However, David could miss out on those first. I wouldn't on what is this on Dominic's, right?
Yeah.
First. And I wouldn't put the coronavirus gets worse. I mean, that's.
I mean, I know it's bad, but like in Illinois, they have done a pretty decent job of like not overwhelming the healthcare system. So I mean, like worse in the sense that like these hospitals get overwhelmed and they can't like have everybody.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but but the phrasing is somewhat awkward because you're not.
Okay.
If the coronavirus pandemic, I mean, you have to be specific. If he's so if the coronavirus pandemic, like you need to connect the coronavirus pandemic with David's job right away.
Okay.
So if the coronavirus pandemic keeps David, starts keeping David at work for longer hours, right? Like, so you are implying that his job is connected to the pandemic, and the pandemic at this point is okay, it's under control.
Right.
But it could get out of control. So the connection has to be there. Otherwise, we don't know. I mean, the virus is the virus. I mean, you catch it and it gets worse for you if you have underlying conditions or you're suffering more or you're older. The virus won't get worse. The virus is what it is. The pandemic or the spread of the pandemic can get worse, and that in turn has an effect on his work because he is in that area of he's a first responder, I guess, but we don't know it until you make the connection. Now you can imply that connection the way I just said, right? So I would say if the pandemic I would say starts getting worse and David has to take longer hours, whatever, at the hospital?
Yes.
Or he works, right? So I think that the transition there kind of, I think that I mean, I don't know if you see it, but I think that it makes it better. Like it's more better connected. So you need to fix this now, right? And then your bread and butter works. At home, David is a dad. Sorry, my dad is trying to bang me for some reason. My dog is trying to bang me. Hey, stop. Ramona, basta. Hey. Okay. So at home, David is a dad and a husband, but during the day, he's... So what is the bigger story? So you're going into her life, right? Like she's a U.S. intelligence analyst. She's able to work from home. Warriors did want David to stay home if he could. I mean, I don't think we need this. Understands his role in the world. It's a little bit trite. The pair have discussed what would happen if things do get worse. The plan is Warrior staying with a friend who's also a doctor. Okay, so I think that up until then, you have like your narrative lead works well, I think.
Okay.
But now you have to show me the bigger picture. So what's going on there, right? Like how many? I don't know. What is the direction that this is gonna take? You know.
Yeah.
So is it about like it's about? So the title is not very clear.
Yeah. Okay.
So after that, what I would try to know is like, what are you trying to talk about? The health professionals in Illinois, or like in Chicago in particular, or like how the pandemic is spreading in Illinois or in Chicago in particular. So that has to be your nut graph, right? Like otherwise, I don't know where these people are located, what is the story about, etc. So everything has to be like made explicit in that nut graph, right? Who are these people representative of, right? So your nut graph has to be here. And why do I care about? Right? So that's basically the question, right? Why do I care about these guys? Draculis? Sounds like a Game of Thrones name.
Yeah, it was a little bit odd.
Dracarys. So again, like we have the mayor of Chicago. So the story's Chicago centric, right? Okay. So we need to know, like, what is the story about? Like, if it's about the medical personnel, then you have to make it about it. The mayor of Chicago driving her car around and asking people to follow social distancing doesn't quite like mesh with that. That seems like extemporaneous to the story. It could be interesting later, but
I think I was just trying to like find a better segue into just like, because I want it to be like how these people like are adjusting their lives, like their daily life, and like the people they live with are also adjusting everything. So it's just like, while like people are still being kind of, let's say, dumb about it, and like still going outside and still like gathering in bigger groups and
yeah, but what
following these gum.
Is your story about that, or is your story about like people in hospitals?
It's about people in hospitals like adjusting their daily life, but it's also like, but that I think I was just trying to get at was like, it makes it harder for like medical staff to like keep things kind of, well, for everything to keep under control when people are still not following it, and then these people have to go home and like risk their families and like whoever they live with.
Yeah, but the levels of connection between the hospital and what people are going through in the hospital and the mayor driving a car around, there's too many layers. There's too many. You're asking your reader to actually connect too many things.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it can't be done, but
no, I understand.
It needs to be it needs to be structured, right? You need to go from one place to the other, then to the other, then to the other. You cannot just put like the medical personnel and the guy driving around, right? Or the woman driving around. I think that, I mean, if I were you, I would try to hone in, like, if the stories are about medical personnel, then tell us everything you know about it before you jump onto the mayor driving around, right? Like, so I would say, like, you probably need a good nut graph there to explain why, like, I mean, how much medical personnel in Chicago is affected at this point, how many hospitals you have there been any like requests for extra personnel as we've had in New York? Like, we had somebody was making fun of it, like a week or so ago, there was an Amber Alert, like saying, if you are a doctor or a medical or nurse or something, and you want to help with a crisis, report to your, like, is anybody a doctor here? Like, basically, so they're asking for extra personnel because they don't have enough people, right? So if something similar is happening in Chicago or not, and if it's not happening, then why? Or if it is happening, then why? Right? And have experts comment on that, because you don't have experts there about the topic, right? You only have the main characters.
Yeah.
So those are things that I probably would want to see in a story like this.
Yeah.
And you're probably undersourced at this point, right? I mean,
yeah. No, I have a few interviews lined up for like, it wasn't necessarily a problem. It was just I was trying to work around their schedules to like talk to everybody.
Okay. But does that make do the?
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. So, and you don't. What is the multimedia you're gonna work on?
So that it's gonna be a video slideshow with like audio over it.
So video and audio.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I think we covered it for the most part. So you know what to do next.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Rini.
Yeah, thank you.
So who would like to go next? All right. If we're all covered or everybody's good with what they have, I would suggest, like, go back to work. Everybody, make sure that you have your stories as soon as possible ready for editing. That is important. I mean, the editing is going to be like, I mean, you've seen the stories change like overnight with a couple of good edits. Whatever you have, it may be great, but the stories can still be improved. So if you turn them in last minute, then your edits are going to be rushed. If you show us a story early on, then we may, like, you know, the story may like take a leap, and we may take it to a different place, right? Much better. So take it seriously, respect the work of others too, right? Like people who have to fact check, they'll have a kind of a harder time if you turn in everything last minute, which in turn will undermine the quality of your story too. So make sure that you're respecting everybody's schedule and everybody's work. Okay. So are we good, guys?
I had a quick question about my story.
Sure. Do you want to go into it?
Sure.
Okay, let me find it.
So my question was essentially, since my story, like the first part of my story, is about a rent strike that's scheduled for May 1st.
Yeah.
What would you want me to have for Monday in terms of like what I should maybe include?
So you have sources here? No, yet.
Yeah, I do towards the end of the story.
So, I mean, immediately what I can think of is how many people did not pay rent last month, right? Or could not pay rent last month. So this, I would say this should be here. So your third graph should be like, because this is for May 1st, right?
Yeah.
But this, the COVID-19 has had like, by April, there were like at least 12 million people unemployed, right? This strike is for New York. So how many unemployed people were already reported in, let's say, May, and how many were struggling or could not pay rent in May? So those things you have to report, because those are the preconditions for the strike in a way, right?
Yeah.
So I would say have all the data that you have, that you can actually accrue from like people who are struggling to pay rent at this point, unemployment, etc., in New York, because your story is about New York, and have it ready there. So this is May 1st. So we're going to be publishing this story ultimately. So Monday is basically May. No, it's April the 27th, correct?
Yeah.
So April 27th. Then we have on the 29th, we're going to be either on the Osprey. No, I said on the Osprey on the 4th, correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So you'll have time there to adapt the story on, like, see the results of a strike, right? What happens on May 1st. And then you'll have to jiggle and move, because it's so timely, you'll have to move a little bit of your maybe lead on May 1st or May 2nd, like when we know what the results of the strike are. Maybe Cuomo will issue I don't know, rent freeze or like something. We don't know. I mean, at this point, is because you're working on breaking news, it's hard to imagine what may happen. But what you do need to have is everything up to that point, right? What led to the strike? What are the why are people, like, you know, gathering and thinking about like not paying rent? Well, because they can't, right? Like, and why can't they? Well, because of the COVID-19 that has kept a bunch of people out of work, and how many people are in like precarious conditions that they can't work from home. So those are things that like immediately you can actually add into your bread and butter there, like to explain the conditions for like why is this
Yeah,
strike.
because the source told me that at least 6,000 people so far haven't been able to pay their rent. So maybe that would be something I'd throw in there.
6,000 only in New York?
That's what the source told me.
I mean, it must be more than that. It should be more
I'll
than
look for an updated figure.
yeah, and check. I mean, I would look into like also news stories, not to copy their numbers, but to see their sources, right? Like look into the New York Times. I mean, look into I would say the Post, the New York Post, or the Daily News, right? Those are probably I'm gonna wait. Those are probably good indicators of like you can actually consult. You can check where are their sources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like follow with them. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, guys. So I'll let you be. I mean, did I answer your question, Anthony?
Yeah, I think so. I think once the strike happens, I'll change it if need be and update it from
Okay.
before.
All right. Okay, guys. So I'll see you on Monday. Remember that I'll be checking your. So I'll start checking. Sarah, when you send me an email on Friday, say right as early as possible. When you know everybody's stories are there, and I'll start looking into them individually. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, guys. Have a good rest of the week and be safe.